Power of the Talk by the back left corner, and we're going to take a little bit of a spin on this topic. We only chose 6 of the different linguistic styles, speaking the 6 that we thought were the most important that you should know.
So the first one we're talking about is avoiding verbal opposition. It prevents potentially good ideas because typically these people they oppose personal attacks. They'll oppose people talking with them in a way that they think is derogatory. It's not a good way to judge candidates. A lot of an example in the book was people from top business schools were given an intense interview, and women tend, in this example, women tend to do they kind of shut down in a way, and also makes them appear weak. But typically the women, after they weren't in that specific example, they would do much better. And then works well with others when they share their style, because this can be misunderstood and they could miss the ritual nature of this linguistic style.
So one that hasn't been talked about yet today is managing up, and this is kind of just acting on your own and being your own manager. This is really nice because it builds a sense of trust between you and the manager. It lets them know that you're able to do what you're supposed to do without them having to tell you. Becoming reliable, they know they can trust you and they can rely on you, and you're an effective employee because you want to waste their time. There is a bad side to it. It's that never mind.
So giving feedback, a lot of people tend to emphasize strength first and then present weakness later, but it's probably not a good idea because some people might see that as a main point and then an afterthought. So really giving feedback is all about producing clarity. So it can also save face or status. I guess if you're presenting something to your boss, you don't want to seem like the guy that jacked up the whole project, but it's not really a good idea to lead with that mentality. You should just get the stuff you need to get done first and then worry about the consequences later.
Another style of speaking that you should be aware about as a boss or authority figure is being indirect. It's basically what it sounds like, speaking indirectly. Typically this happens because blatantly directing others is seen as too bossy in the workplace or team environments. So some consequences of this is your subordinates conclude that you don't have any authority or assertiveness or confidence for that matter. So there's some things to fix that is speaking clearly, concisely, with a very persistent tone. And what I mean by that is just making sure you don't have a tone that's overly demanding, but that is instructing when you want someone to do something. So almost like a teacher, if you will.
Sharing credit. Why is sharing credit important to you as the employer, female or male? And what message ultimately does it send to your manager? So when you share credit during a presentation, when you're with 3 or 4 people, right there and then it establishes your credibility. Your manager is sitting there thinking these 4 or 5 people came together, collaborated with one idea, and have brought it to the table and presented it well. Second of all, it shows your cooperation skills when you're sharing credit, because in order to share credit, you have to go ahead and collaborate with people. Thirdly, it just shows respect to your peers, and where respect is due, respect should always be given.
There's typically a good time and a bad time to ask questions. And as an employee, that's an important thing to know, but as a manager, that's also really a good thing to think about. At a company that I work for, some of the upper level management work around that fact by making sure to communicate about the process of asking questions before even getting there. And they do that simply by telling their new employees that yes, there are stupid questions. There's some advantages and disadvantages to that. The disadvantages that might discourage employees from asking questions that would have helped them in the workplace. But the good thing is that it lets employees know that they should be thinking, should I ask this question, should I not ask this question, and how is it going to affect how my manager perceives me? So as a manager, I think the most important thing to take away from asking questions is just communicating with your employees on how you perceive questions and how open you are to them.
That concludes our presentation.
So same question to you guys. if you're talking to a young lady who's just entering the workforce, and you could only give her one piece of advice, what's the one piece of advice you'd give her based on the contents of the chapter?
Being assertive.
It's like say, know your audience. I mean, like you said, everyone's got their own linguistic style, so as long as you can pick up on it and apply it to them, it'll make your conversation flow.
And maybe to build off that, I mean, obviously not everyone can, men and women alike, it's not just an easy fix to be like, oh yeah, just fix your self-confidence. Like, go ahead, do that. It's not as easy as it sounds. So that can definitely be a huge tool to just know your certain talking points and build off those talking points.
Yeah, I think that's especially important for ladies because what Tannen's telling us is, look, they feel that if they're really confident and really assertive and really straightforward, they're going to feel like they're bitches, right? That's what happens because of how they've been socialized, and they're going to be perceived that way. So just saying, well, you should be more confident, sort of almost puts a woman, that's like throwing a snake in her lap. But she's going, no, that's not what I want to do because that means I'm acting in the wrong way. I think you're making a really interesting point there. And that's, I think, one of the really difficult parts for both men and women because we want to encourage women to feel strong, and at the same time they're still bouncing up against this idea, if I do, then I'm going to do something wrong, right? It's a hard problem, isn't it? Well identified. So now let's ask the question on the other side. If you were to be talking to a young gentleman going into work, and you could only give him one piece of advice, what would you recommend for him?
I'd say listening. Listening because generally most men want to speak first and cover all their bases by their ability to talk and etc. I think a lot of different lessons can be learned just by listening.
I think assuming that you're immediately right is not a good thing. You're listening, which is important.
Yeah.
Because most time people think they're right. Most time they are, but when they're not, then they just look worse.
We're going to talk about active listening later on in the term, and it turns out it's not that easy. And I think it's also really important. So well done.